One of the main sources of replenishment of gladiator groups were prisoners of war. After conquering new territories, the Romans captured many prisoners, who were then sold into slavery. Convicted criminals were often sentenced to gladiatorial combat. This was considered a more humiliating and torturous punishment than mere execution. People who could not pay their debts could be sold into slavery. Sometimes they became gladiators to pay off their debts. In rare cases, free men decided to become gladiators of their own free will. Usually they became gladiators because of financial difficulties or for the sake of fame and possible monetary rewards. Gladiator, a fighter in ancient Rome who fought other gladiators or wild animals for the amusement of the public in special arenas for the right to be freed from slavery. Gladiators could be awarded the symbol of freedom, the rudis, a wooden sword that meant the gladiator no longer had to fight. The main reason for the emergence of gladiatorial games was a funeral rite borrowed from the Etruscans. The Etruscans were an ancient civilization that inhabited the northwest of the Apennine Peninsula, modern Tuscany in the center of Italy, between the Arno and Tiber rivers in the first millennium before our era, and created an advanced culture that preceded the Roman one and had a great influence on it. The ancient Romans borrowed building technology, particularly the construction of arched and vaulted structures, from the Etruscan culture. Gladiator fights, chariot races, and many funeral rites are also of Etruscan origin. During funeral rites, potential victims of human sacrifice, not only slaves but also free ones, had to fight with swords in their hands near the tomb, and thus the weak would die and the strong would be left alive, eliciting the admiration of those present. Many slaves voluntarily tried to get into the gladiator school, because by fighting in the arena and winning the love of the public, they could free themselves from slavery. So often slaves started fights among themselves to show their strength. In the school of gladiators, on newcomers expected harsh training and the same difficult living conditions, many could not cope with the heavy load. In the 105th year before our era, gladiatorial games were introduced among public spectacles. Henceforth, the state entrusted its magistrates with the task of organizing them. Gladiatorial games are becoming a favorite spectacle both in the capital and throughout the country, and this is quickly taken into account by those who claim power. Caesar, in the 65th year, organized games in which 320 pairs of gladiators took part. His enemies were frightened. It was not only the armed gladiators that were frightening. What was frightening was that the lavish games became a sure means of gaining favor with the people and securing votes in elections. In 63, Emperor Nero issued an edict allowing free women to participate in gladiatorial tournaments. Women fought as brutally as men and attracted a lot of attention. Emperor Domitian, in the year 85, brings dwarf gladiators into the arena. Although most gladiators were slaves, some achieved high status and fame. Successful gladiators could win large cash prizes and become popular heroes. In the year 325, Constantine the Great, in every way possible, promoted the spread of Christianity. In the same year, he promulgated his edict, which censured bloody games throughout the Roman Empire. Henceforth, the courts were ordered to send criminals not to the arena, but to hard labor in the mines. However, the emperor's edict seems to have affected primarily the eastern provinces of the empire. In the Apennine Peninsula itself, where gladiatorial games had once originated, Constantine himself contributed to the revocation of his own edict by granting the priests in Umbria and Etruria, by way of exception, the right to organize such games, and thereafter, gladiatorial games began to revive everywhere. In the year 404, a Christian monk, Telemachus of Asia Minor, jumped into the arena and rushed between the fighting men, trying to separate them. This pious zeal cost him his life. The angry crowd pounced on the peacemaker and mauled him. However, Telemachus's sacrifice was not in vain. Under the impression of his martyrdom, Emperor Honorius banned gladiatorial games forever. When a gladiator was wounded and could not fight, he would raise two fingers, index and middle, up, thus stopping the fight, admitting his loss and asking the emperor to decide his fate. Depending on the opinion of the emperor, the victor was to finish the one lying down or let him live if he had earned his life by valiant resistance. In the games held in Rome itself, the emperors showed by means of gestures that changed over time. If a gladiator was able to impress the public with his military bravery, he could be pardoned. The patricians, senators, and emperors who organized the fights could pardon a gladiator, but it was considered bad form to keep each fighter alive, as they might be considered avaricious. Although it is commonly believed that a thumbs up meant life and a thumbs down meant death, in this way, gestures are now used for approval and condemnation. Don't forget to click the thumbs up and give life to this video. In most ancient games, regardless of direction, the outstretched thumb meant death, symbolizing a reaching sword, and life simply meant a hidden thumb in a fist, symbolizing a sword in a scabbard. Not the least role was played by shouting wishes. The belief that the ancient Roman crowd granted life or death to a defeated gladiator by turning the thumb up or down arose after the appearance of the painting Pollice Verso by the artist Jean-Léon Gérôme, based on a not quite correctly interpreted Latin text. Pollice Verso is a Latin phrase meaning fingers down, used in the context of gladiatorial combat. It is the name given to the gesture shown by the ancient Roman crowd to condemn a defeated gladiator to death. Many researchers also come to the conclusion that the emperor did not put his finger down, but put it sideways and, bending his hand, touched his neck with it. The fact is that the victorious gladiator lowered the defeated on his knees and, in the case of a death sentence, plunged the blade deep vertically down into the neck, behind the collarbone, piercing the heart. In this way, the emperor literally indicated where to strike. In ancient Rome, there were several types of gladiators, each uniquely armed and trained. Determining the most dangerous gladiators can be based on their weaponry, tactics, and reputation. Several types of gladiators that were considered particularly dangerous. Mumio were armed with a short sword, 50 centimeters long, a large rectangular shield, and a helmet with a crest. In his tactics, he used a heavy shield for defense and delivered powerful sword strikes. Good defense and powerful weapons made him a formidable opponent. The secutor was specially trained to fight the retiarius. Secutors were a type of murmillo and were equipped with similar armor and weapons, including a medium oval shield and a gladius, short sword. Their helmet covered their entire face except for 2 eye holes to protect their face from their opponent's sharp trident. The helmet was almost round and smooth, so that the retiarius net could not snag on it. Specially trained to fight fast and agile opponents, retiarius appeared at the dawn of the empire. They were armed with trident, dagger, and net. Except for a loincloth supported by a wide bulteus and a large armor on the left shoulder joint, the retiarius had no clothing, including a helmet. Sometimes a metal shield, gallerus, was used to protect the neck and lower face. Retiarii usually fought with secutors, but sometimes with myrmidons as well. Its agility and unusual weaponry made it unpredictable and dangerous. Dimachus used 2 swords, one in each hand. They fought without helmet or shield, wore short soft tunics, arms and legs bandaged with tight bandages, and sometimes wore greaves. Fought with 2 swords, giving him an advantage in close combat. His high maneuverability and ability to attack from 2 sides made him very dangerous. Among the most famous gladiators was Spartacus. Spartacus was the leader of the slave and gladiator revolt in Italy. He was a Thracian, became a slave under unclear circumstances, and later a gladiator. The Roman Emperor Commodus loved to fight in the arena as a gladiator. Some Roman emperors, including Commodus, took part in gladiatorial fights themselves, although their battles were often staged and posed no real danger to them. Also, one of the most famous gladiators was Narcissus, the gladiator who killed Commodus. Commodus was the last member of the Antonine dynasty, son of Marcus Aurelius and Faustina the Younger. Commodus was with the Roman troops at the time of the death of his father Marcus Aurelius. In the first part of the movie Gladiator, he kills his father. But in fact, Marcus Aurelius died of the plague at Vindobona on the Danube, modern Vienna, on the 17th of March in the year 180th. Commodus practically did not engage in public affairs, preferring them to entertainment and debauchery. All the years of his reign were accompanied by a depleted treasury and huge embezzlement. January 1st, 193, Commodus was going to celebrate his accession to the post of consul and wanted to appear at the ceremony in gladiatorial attire. But these plans were not to be realized. The new Praetorian prefect Quintus Aemilius Laetus, the emperor's mistress Marcia, and the freedman Eclectus decided to get rid of the inadequate emperor. The city prefect Pertinax joined the conspiracy in exchange for a promise to make him emperor. Marcia gave Commodus poisoned wine to drink. The poison did not have the expected effect, and then the emperor was strangled by a slave, the athlete Narcissus, who was wrestling with Commodus as a sparring partner.